So good morning and welcome everybody to our first breakout session of today's virtual event. This is the Infinity Loop Playbook, a guide to the virtual experience product offerings. My name is Andy White. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing here at Thirsty. I'm joined by Rick Stoner, who's the VP of Sales and Client Strategy, who you met literally moments ago during the keynote. And we also have Charlie Weber, who's going to be our moderator for today's session. Just a couple of key points or some housekeeping before we get started. This is going to be an approximately 20 to 25 minute presentation with some Q&A at the end. So as we go forth through the presentation, any questions that you have, feel free to put them into the chat bar here to the right by clicking one of the little chat bubbles here to the left. And then also, if you have any technical problems, you can also request support through that chat feature as well. We'll also be taking surveys throughout the course. And at the very end, the session is going to remain open for about 5 minutes after it to address any questions that we don't get to throughout the session. And then when the session is going to be concluded, you can leave this by clicking on the browser tab, not the entire window, but the tab to the top of the screen, and it will take you back to the main event page. So just a couple minutes ago, we introduced you to our concept of the Infinity Loop. And on a personal level, if your house is anything like mine, we have Disney Plus literally running on a never-ending loop at home. See, I have two little boys at home, and right now they love to watch everything Disney, specifically the movie Moana. And as I was watching the Moana movie with them last week, moment of inspiration came over me. There's a very specific scene in that movie where she's learning to guide or navigate through some uncharted waters by using her hands to kind of frame out the star. She's looking for that North Star to guide her to that journey. And it really reminded me of what we're going through right now, because the North Star that we're all using is the return to live events, but there's going to be some ebb and some flow to getting to there. And the reason there's going to be some ebb and flow is that although we have the collective journeys together to get there, our pathways are going to vary a little bit based on the state restrictions of where our corporate headquarters are, where the headquarters of our customers are, where their customers' customers are, the headquarters of some of the convention centers, and essentially larger live events. So there's going to be a lot of variables as we go through this. But what we thought was really interesting is to take a look at the Infinity journey and look at the different use cases for some of the different products that we have based on some of these restrictions. So right now we just picked Restore, Illinois, because number one, McCormick Center is a large convention space. But number two, it really gives kind of a guide or a pathway to how state, at least a specific state is going to be reopening. So at the beginning here in phase one, you saw that there was a lot of just stay-at-home orders, so virtual experiences came to be as one. And then as you got through phase 2, 3, and 4, you can look at, they're going to allow small gatherings of 10 plus people, leading to 50 plus people, and essentially the return of larger events. So right now I'm going to turn over to Rick, and he's going to show you how we've overlaid the Infinity Loop on these phases and how we're going to navigate the rest of this session. Rick?
Thanks, Andy. So Adam and I kind of walked through at a high level each Infinity Loop product. And what we thought would be interesting is pick one state as really a proof of concept and think through where they fit in any given, one given state's phase to recovery. So you can see here, Infinity mapping, live stream events, virtual environments, virtual journeys. Those are about as flexible and versatile as it gets. Now, when we get to phase 5, what we would call normal, right, post-COVID-19, and mass gathering trade shows and events are back in our playbook. They may not be as much of a focus or a priority, but certainly could be in terms of a hybrid strategy, knowing that attendance may be slow to come back in terms of the numbers that we're used to. Hub and spoke events, now we're getting into kind of the return of live and face-to-face marketing. Obviously, it wouldn't be a fit if the state isn't a rapid spread or trying to flatten the curve, whereas they could be a fit as things get better, whether it's recovering or revitalizing or we're in a fully restored state environment. Virtual briefing center tours, one of the things that excites us about this is just its versatility, regardless of what's going on with the national pandemic. And then pop-up environments and safe exhibits. This gets into, we're past the worst of it. We're now into a phase where we have the ability to meet in face-to-face, whether it's at 50 people, which is what Illinois has for phase 4, or phase 5 with very little restrictions and thinking about safe exhibits. So this is just one example. And what we're going to do is just encourage everybody to think about the big shows that they have, the states that host those shows, and what that looks like for them. One question we wanted to ask, I mean, you can kind of see our wheels turning on, okay, McCormick hosts a lot of shows in Chicago. That kind of gives us a proof of concept or a minimum viable product to think this through. But we're curious on your end, are you aware of the quarantine restrictions or phases to return of your most vital trade show or events host state? I'm curious if clients are already thinking through this way. It'll kind of give Andy and I an idea of kind of where your head's at and how you're planning for things. So the poll should pop up in your bell icon in the upper right. Go ahead and select yes or no. Again, just are you aware of the restrictions for your key show or events host state? Charlie, let us know kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah, I see a slight majority of folks saying yes, but it's pretty close to 50-50. We have almost 100 responses, and the yes has it by just a few percentage points.
Got it. Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Again, I would encourage everyone to think of your top 1, 2, 3 shows, where they're being hosted, and just keep an eye on trends in that state and have an idea of what the mandates are, because that could inform some of your strategy in terms of virtual, face-to-face, or a hybrid of both. So Andy and I are going to dive in at a deeper level to each of these products. If the keynote shared what those products were and just the strategy platform that we're counseling our clients with, what this session does is kind of digs into a deeper level and envisions what the possibilities are. For infinity mapping, again, just looking to really take a workshop approach to what we could do here. If you want to get into the depth of that, I would encourage you really to attend the next session, Defining Virtual Audiences with Infinity Mapping, hosted by Adam and Pete from our creative team. They'll do very much a deep dive into what that product offering is. Live stream events, you're in one right now, so we won't spend too much time here. You obviously just saw the keynotes. 2 big things to think about here. This can get as sophisticated with high production quality as you want it to be. You saw Adam and I's kind of backroom environment. Or you can kind of do at-home mail kits and make it a little bit more guerrilla marketing. Virtual environments, this is probably what people are closely associated with, maybe a virtual exhibit. Again, just trying to get a sense of what we're doing from the in real life trade shows that we're planning to how we take that into a virtual space. So this is a quick example. You saw Adam briefly play this during the keynote, but again, just gives you an idea of within the rendering, what we can do to make that experience and environment dynamic, clickable, in terms of something that's engaging and grabs our audience's attention. And then the last thing I'll touch on is virtual journeys. So again, just a more robust virtual environment, but multiple scenes, detailed stories, and this is more ideal for guided presentations online or small group presentations. And what excites us about this is we see a shelf life of virtual journeys beyond just a canceled or rescheduled show. This is really a selling tool for those people that are thinking about things in their field. We shared the Massimo example. Again, we're creating a virtual operating room and kind of showcasing some of the products that our client was looking to showcase at a trade show. But some of the feedback that we got from our client in terms of input from their sales team is this could be on a tablet, on a computer, in the field, on the road, in front of a physician. Just a great quick tool to kind of showcase what we're looking to do. And that goes beyond any specific event or trade show.
So as we mentioned before, the full return of live events is ultimately our North Star, and it's going to be kind of a phased or progressive approach to it. The light switch is not necessarily going to go on. But there's still opportunities to connect with audiences in face-to-face in kind of different ways and unique engagements. So the first one, a hub and spoke event. So Adam mentioned this in the keynote. It's really looking at a centralized experience or presentation that is then shared with other satellite groups. So some of the different use cases you can think about, companies still need to launch products. They still need to have influencer events or press and media engagement or national sales meeting. And in thinking through this type of strategy, it's imperative to really focus on engaging those satellite audiences. So for example, you could pair a live product launch event in Chicago to a group of maybe 10 to 50 local media influencers while sending physical mail kits or physical press kits to those satellite simultaneously so that they can interact and follow along as well. And as those satellite audiences open up some of those product kits and they're engaging, they can share some of those reactions or some of their feedback or even polling questions live via a social feed back to that centralized experience to really join the entire groups together. So if you think about a typical keynote, everybody's used to being in one room where you can have live demonstrations. You need to find a way to kind of bridge that digital gap if you're looking at hub and spoke moving forward. So some unique ways that you can kind of bridge that gap is really leveraging technology to get face-to-face. So check out this technology called hologram streaming. So now imagine sitting in an auditorium where you're one of those 10 or 50 media influencers and this giant white box is on that stage itself. And periodically over an hour, different speakers from a brand that you know and trust that you want to hear from are coming onto stage and literally interacting with you live. Or you can even take it a step further. Take this technology and maybe integrate it, put it on wheels and take it on a mobile tour to some of your VIP customer events throughout the nation. Again, finding ways to bridge that digital gap. Another interesting way is we've talked about strategy and technology. Now let's talk location. So people are obviously itching to get out of the house right now. They're suffering from screen fatigue. So much so that I don't know if you guys have seen through the news, but there's actually been a huge uptick in usage of drive-in movie theaters. So one unique way to think about how we could potentially use drive-in movie theaters to engage in audiences is literally bring them into the fold. So what if you leverage a creative location to drive that impact? So for example, this is a mock-up of a football or a sports stadium leveraging the giant Megatron, if you will, of looking at a giant AV integration with that centralized event beaming to people who have showed up in their cars. You already have built-in social distancing. You have the ability to connect with small groups and kind of a larger group virtually. And you can also integrate physically a product or some kind of expo into it as well so people can get hands-on with this. And what's interesting about this is about a week or two ago, I read an article that inspired this concept that the Miami Dolphins were already considering turning their stadiums into drive-in movie theaters during some down periods. So again, it's not just fully digital or virtual, but finding ways to engage with smaller groups. If you can only meet in groups of 10, how can you leverage them to groups of 50 moving forward? So the next journey we're going to talk about is virtual briefing center tours. So a briefing center, just to clear up some of the terminology here, a quick point, is that you might know them as briefing centers or innovation centers, customer experience centers, even product showcase. But long story short, these are permanent environments of curated brand experiences. So it could be a facility tour, it could be product interactions, you could have kiosks, private meeting rooms. The entire thing is staged and curated to have a fully immersed brand experience permanently inside of a corporate headquarters. But a lot of people have taken the ability to pivot now to leverage those permanent facilities to let people in virtually. So for example, last week, we're members of an association called the ABPM, which is the Association for Briefing Program Managers. So a lot of those people who have those full briefing programs have taken upon themselves to create these virtual walkthroughs with some of their employees to, again, bridge that gap. And what's interesting is what they were sharing throughout that virtual event last week is that the owners of these briefing centers have not only seen that the visitor participation has remained steady, but in some cases, it's actually increased. And the reason for the increase is it's unlocked a previously very challenging audience to engage in the C-suite. A lot of the C-suite, the CMOs, the CEOs, could not previously physically attend some of these experience centers just based on their schedules. You have a full day travel out, you have a full day or two inside the center, and then a full day back. They just couldn't fit it in. But going virtual, at least with some of these briefing centers, has allowed to extend that reach. So these permanent centers are still in use right now, and they're eagerly awaiting the ability to meet face to face, but again, finding ways to engage virtually. And so if you don't already have a briefing center in your permanent facility right now, I'll direct you to Dursi.com right now. You can download a white paper on the Insights page right now. And it really tells the backstory of how we built not only just a center, but an entire building, the Carrier Center for Intelligent Buildings in Florida. And it tells the story of how we not only designed it, but figured out a way to earn the highest designation in briefing centers as the world-class facility. So if you get a chance after the session, hit up our website, download it. It's a fantastic read about thinking about how we approach some of these situations to really uniquely engage audiences. So Adam mentioned briefly about pop-up environments. So this is nothing new. Pop-up environments have been around for a while, but the new thing is just the thinking about how you can engage those audiences. So previously during live events at their full immersion, we're kind of used to having either a trade show or a large event in one central location, in this example, Chicago, where everybody flies out to Chicago. But because of the restrictions right now, we need to find ways to actually bring the experience to the people instead of the people to the experience. So going off the marketing environments idea, what if you were to take a look at leveraging some of the open retail spaces now in downtown metropolitan areas? So consider you leveraging the strategies of heat mapping to understand where your VIP customers are at and where those major influencers are. And then consider leaning into driving distances versus air travel. So if you have a retail center in Chicago, or maybe even looking at the neighborhoods like in Naperville or going out to San Francisco, Austin, Texas, you already have some of these facilities where the logistics are already built in. You can leverage a build out and actually have an innovation center in each of the metropolitan areas so that you can still engage VIP customers who can't fly to you, but could drive to you. And considering not only just new build outs, but some of you already have existing trade show properties that are sitting in crates right now. There's no reason that we couldn't explore how we could pull those properties out of the crates, find a nice space like this, and be able to engage with audiences. What's really nice about this is you have complete command and control, so guests can feel safe and secure in being able to enter those facilities. It's just thinking a little bit differently about some of those environments. And then the next one would be mobile experiences. Again, this isn't necessarily a new channel, but it's another way that you can bring the experience to the people. So what's really nice about this channel is you can have engagement strategies of one-to-one, one-to-some, or one-to-many. And again, you can engage with them on their terms. So for example, this is a mock-up of a little pop-up environment, a mobile tour that could be situated in a corporate headquarters for some of your most valuable targets right now that can't travel right now. Or you can facilitate this into a healthcare operation if you wanted to show off a new medical device or a product launch. Or you can even take it to a bigger idea and define being on location in terms of looking at business parks, or again, stadium parks that are looking for alternate revenue as well, that you can have a centralized experience, almost like a hub spoke, and invite people to that. Now, if you're unfamiliar with mobile tours, just as a side note, they tend to get in different scales and scopes. So you could have a full 53-foot trailer that could extend out all the way down to smaller Sprinter vans. And don't leverage yourself just into one different tour of one property. You could also consider having kind of a regionalized tour throughout the United States. What's really nice about this is, as we've seen with Illinois specifically, some of those phases have kind of gone back to different quarantine periods. So when you have mobile properties on wheels, you can pivot at the drop of a dime. So if you can't get into a state right now, you can pivot and go on to that next location and kind of swing back around when that state is open for business. Again, looking at scalability and flexibility and engaging audiences.
And Andy, one thing I'll note here, when we think about the return to face-to-face, portables, small pop-ups with small attendees, or mobile are probably going to be the first things that come back.
Sure.
Again, referencing phase four is 50 people, a mobile environment, a mobile trailer, a pop-out trailer like we're seeing here, fits great for that size attendees of 50 or under people. So if you're kind of wrapping your head around everything that you could do and looking to linear prioritize, like, okay, what's the first thing that could come back? Certainly portables and mobile may very well be that answer.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rick. Think about a mobile tour and almost redefining what the regional program looks like. It's the same similarities, meeting your prospects kind of on their home turf or even in their own backyard in a unique and engaging way. And then finally, safe exhibits. That's a big talking point right now. About 2 weeks ago, we had a pretty in-depth webinar, so I'm not going to get into the specifics during this session just for the sake of time, but I would love to direct you guys to our website on the Insights page, where you'd be able to get a copy of the pre-recorded demo of this. It was about an hour long, and we had some heavy hitters on that topic with our VP Creative, Todd Sussman, and our Executive Creative Director of Customer Experience, Pete Riddell. And they walk through the future of engagement and planning for the return of in-person events. Again, it's about a 60-minute session, a lot of great information. I would love for you guys to, at the end of our virtual event, check that out, download it, and then really dig in. So I'm going to kick it back over to Rick right now, and he's going to walk you through some of our essential takeaways, and then we'll start to field some questions. Rick?
Yeah, so one thing you'll notice today is because we're presenting and you're taking in a lot of information, we're going to end each session on essential takeaways, things that, if nothing else, remember these and think about how it applies to your program. So for today's V-Meet on the Infinity Loop Playbook, number one, allow national and state data to guide your face-to-face marketing approach. Whether it's CDC data that's coming out on a state-by-state level or just following the news on a national level. Obviously, everyone's personally tuned in, but professionally, it does make a difference, and certainly different by state. Two would be to consider the versatility of virtual experiences across different phases. So again, we kind of laid out a sample approach of looking at it specific to Illinois, how you would lay out our Infinity Loop approach to maybe the state of Texas, the state of Florida, versus maybe the state of New York or New Jersey versus Nevada, may all be very different. So when you cross-reference your event and trade show schedule, be sure to keep those things in mind. And then third, just find the opportunities within the limitations. What we're going through right now is not an all or nothing approach. And just because the pandemic has essentially temporarily stopped face-to-face marketing doesn't mean that marketing and your company's business and marketing objectives have stopped. So, we don't want to see the challenge and the opportunity. We want to see the opportunity in the challenge. And that's what excites us about our Infinity Loop platform, is it allows us, wherever a given state or company is at, to be doing something with what we have. So with that, this is just a quick informational slide on Andy and I's contact information. We got about 5-6 minutes of time for questions, but if anything doesn't come up or you're looking to ask a one-on-one question, please do feel free to reach out to us one-on-one via email. With that, Charlie, why don't you go ahead and please just serve up a few questions from the chat box window, and then we'll cover off on some housekeeping items for the next sessions.
No problem, Rick. I'm waiting for a few to come in, give people a minute. Just one question that I've seen people possibly ask earlier is, you kind of said prioritizing all of these different options. Any other strategies and skills for budgeting to do that?
I'm sorry, Charlie, could you repeat that?
Yes, I can. You mentioned prioritizing some of the different options you've laid out here. How would people best do that, considering budgets, considering everything else they have going on?
Understood. Prioritizing options. Audio cut just for a second there. Yeah, in terms of the Infinity Loop and kind of prioritizing what we could do, I'd mentioned earlier that portables and mobile would probably be the first to come back, right? So most larger exhibit and event schedules do have portables in their trade show schedule, but may have been a 10 by 10 or a pop-up environment. Those may be the first to come back. So certainly be thinking about those. And then in terms of timeline and priority, and I'll talk about this in my next session for making your virtual experience easier. We kind of talked through when to be making certain decisions on kind of a 16, 12, and 8-week basis before any given show. And that kind of allows you to prioritize where things come up.
And then from a budget standpoint, we actually have a specific speaking session in about an hour, I believe. Joe Oakland is going to walk through some different starting prices just to give you guys a sense of where some of these products are going to come in at. And then specifically to your point, excuse me, earlier, Charlie, is from a prioritization standpoint, it really depends on where your kind of customers are. If they're centralized in one key area of the globe or even the nation, focus in on that area and maybe do a test mobile tour there or a pop-up activation to see how it goes, and then you can scale from there.
Yeah, and just a quick sneak peek on the budget front for Joe's session. By and large, the biggest driving factor is number of attendees. So the more attendees you have tuning into your experience, the more bandwidth you have to buy through a third-party cloud server like a Microsoft or an Amazon Web Services. So that's kind of one sneak peek in terms of things that impact budget. But again, be sure to tune into Joe's session, What Drives Virtual Event Costs, at 12:05 Central for more detail there.
So speaking of upcoming sessions, right after the culmination here in about 2 minutes, we'll get started with both the strategic and tactical track. We'll continue on that journey. From a strategic track standpoint, as Rick mentioned early in his, we're going to have Adam Carnes and Pete Riddell walk through defining virtual audience needs with what infinity mapping looks like. And then on the tactical track, making your virtual experience a little bit easier, how Dirty can help, is going to be headlined by Rick and talk a little bit about the planning sessions.
Well, I think we're good. We don't have any questions in the chat. Please feel free to list anybody questions anybody has, and they can answer those in the next couple of minutes before we move on to the next session.
Sure.
The only other one, Andy, that I know that I saw previously is examples that we have of mobile tours and what big changes people would have during this time of COVID, other than just scalability.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by other examples?
Oh, just do we have case studies of mobile tours and how they've been successful?
We do have a number of case studies, and some of them have some restrictions on just people, like copyright issues, that we're allowed to share in kind of smaller group gatherings. We'd love to walk you guys through some of our experiences from our events team. So if you have interest in the pop-up activations or the mobile tours and want to do a deeper dive, by all means, at the end of this virtual event, we can certainly schedule a capabilities demonstration and walk through some of those case studies in a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, that's a good call, Andy. NDAs are what they are, but we have a premier client in the financial services industry where it was essentially a national tour that was mobile marketing led, very much a pre-COVID-19 tour that is very much relevant into evaluating mobile for what we're looking to do now. So we are able to share that on a client by client or client by prospect basis, but not necessarily in a public forum like today. So we'd look forward to that discussion.
Yeah, and on that topic and that specific example, it's not only a mobile tour, there's integrations into some consumer branding and sponsorships, and then even leveraging into the trade show. So it's a very holistic approach to a kind of a different way to think through face-to-face marketing, and we'd love to walk you guys through it.
Okay, Andy, I think we have one more housekeeping slide, and then we can wrap up and get to our next slide, our next vMeet session.
Yeah, so just from a general housekeeping session to go through it again. Again, just to get out of this session, you can go to the top tab, close that out. It'll take you back to the main page. And then if you haven't already, it'll give you some time. We've got a 5-minute break here. Go through and personally register for the next session, whether it's on the strategic or the tactical track. And then I'll get into your personal agenda and allow you to enter that room. So thanks a lot for joining us, guys. It was exciting to meet with you. It's a big day for us. We're excited about the concept. And again, thanks for taking the time out. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.